Arizona's 2025 housing collapse is devastating entire communities faster than anyone predicted. If you think California's market crash looks bad, wait until you see what's happening in the desert. Property values are plummeting by double digits while entire families pack up and flee, leaving behind empty subdivisions and shuttered businesses in what were once America's fastest-growing retirement and suburban destinations. The Arizona housing market meltdown. The numbers behind Arizona's housing meltdown tell a story that's both shocking and predictable. Despite median home prices still hovering above $450,000 statewide, certain regions have seen values plummet by 15% or more since their 2022 peaks. That might sound like good news for buyers. But here's the catch. With mortgage rates sitting at 6.8%, monthly payments on that median-priced home now exceed $3,000, pricing out families earning Arizona's median household income of $68,000. You're looking at a perfect storm of unaffordability. Active housing inventory has surged 58% year over year, with homes now sitting on the market for an average of 65 days, compared to just 18 days during the pandemic buying frenzy. Sellers are slashing prices, offering buyer incentives, and still watching properties languish without offers. The human exodus is accelerating faster than economists predicted. Arizona's population growth, which averaged 2.3% annually from 2019 to 2022, has now turned negative in multiple counties. Remote work flexibility that once drew thousands of California transplants to Arizona's lower-cost markets is evaporating as companies mandate return-to-office policies. Those pandemic migrants are now trapped between underwater mortgages and job markets that no longer support remote lifestyles. Foreclosure filings have jumped 34% statewide, with particularly sharp increases in former boom towns, where speculative buying dominated. The ripple effects are crushing local businesses, school districts, and municipal budgets that expanded during the growth years. While this statewide crisis affects all regions, certain cities face particularly severe challenges that make them ground zero for Arizona's ghost town phenomenon. Surprise! The retirement dream turned nightmare. Surprise! Arizona was supposed to be the perfect retirement haven. Named for its unexpected desert beauty, this northwest Phoenix suburb became a magnet for retirees seeking affordable golf courses, medical facilities, and sunny weather. But in 2025, the only surprise is how quickly the dream has turned into a financial nightmare. The median home price in Surprise hit $425,000, representing a staggering 78% increase since 2019. That growth attracted builders, investors, and thousands of retirees cashing out expensive homes in California and the Midwest. But now those inflated values are working against the city, as retiree migration has slowed by 34% year over year. Here's what's really devastating. Fixed-income retirees who planned their moves based on lower Arizona costs are discovering that housing appreciation has outpaced their Social Security and pension increases. Monthly expenses that seemed manageable in 2021 now consume 80% or more of retirement income. Many are selling at losses and relocating to even cheaper states like Texas or Florida. The ripple effects are brutal. 3 major medical facilities have downsized or closed outright due to reduced patient volume. Senior services that once thrived are cutting staff and programs. Golf courses are struggling with membership declines and deferred maintenance. Foreclosure activity has surged 42%, particularly among older homeowners who took adjustable-rate mortgages during the low-interest period. These retirees are facing payment increases they simply cannot afford on fixed incomes. While Surprise struggles with demographic imbalances, other Arizona cities face different but equally threatening economic pressures. Kasa Grande. When industry abandons the desert, Kasa Grande built its modern identity on becoming Arizona's logistics hub. Positioned strategically between Phoenix and Tucson along Interstate 10, this former agricultural town transformed into a distribution powerhouse during the e-commerce boom. Massive warehouses sprouted across the desert landscape, promising stable middle-class jobs and economic growth that would last for decades. That promise is now crumbling faster than anyone anticipated. Major warehousing operations have shuttered or dramatically downsized, eliminating more than 1,200 jobs between 2024 and 2025. Amazon reduced its workforce by 40% at its Kasa Grande facility. Target closed its regional distribution center entirely. FedEx consolidated operations, moving hundreds of positions to Texas and Nevada, where labor costs are lower and logistics networks more efficient. The unemployment rate has spiked to 8.3%, nearly double Arizona's state average. You can see the devastation driving through Kasa Grande's industrial districts, where commercial vacancy rates have climbed to 28%. Massive warehouses that once hummed with activity now sit empty, their parking lots cracked and overgrown with desert weeds. Home values have dropped 12% as displaced workers relocate to find employment. Families who bought houses expecting steady warehouse wages are now facing foreclosure or strategic default. Local businesses that depended on worker spending are closing their doors. The tax base that funded city services and school improvements is evaporating. What happens when an entire community's economic foundation disappears overnight? Kasa Grande is learning that painful lesson in real time. Economic abandonment creates housing market chaos, but some Arizona communities face the additional burden of infrastructure failure. Goodyear. Infrastructure collapse accelerating decline. Goodyear's infrastructure is failing at the worst possible time. Once a model of suburban development in Arizona's West Valley, this city of 95,000 residents is discovering that rapid growth during the boom years created problems that current revenues simply cannot solve. The result is a cascading crisis that's making basic living increasingly difficult. Water restrictions have become severe enough to halt new construction permits and force residents to let carefully maintained desert landscaping die. The Central Arizona project allocation cuts mean Goodyear must reduce consumption by 22%, but the city's aging distribution system loses nearly 15% of treated water through leaky pipes that officials can't afford to replace. Municipal services have been slashed by 18% due to declining tax revenue. Fire department response times have increased. Parks maintenance has been deferred. Street repairs that should have happened in 2023 are now pushed to 2026 or beyond, creating a network of deteriorating roads that damage vehicles and discourage business investment. Major arterials like Estrella Parkway and McDowell Road show visible signs of neglect. Potholes multiply faster than crews can patch them. Traffic signals malfunction more frequently due to deferred electrical system upgrades. Insurance companies have responded by raising homeowner premiums an average of 35%, citing infrastructure risks and increased claims from water damage and vehicle repairs. These additional costs are pushing more residents toward financial breaking points. You can't build a sustainable community when basic systems are crumbling underneath you. While infrastructure problems plague some cities, others face the devastating combination of speculative investment gone wrong. Buckeye. The speculation bubble bursts. Buckeye was the poster child for pandemic-era real estate speculation. This sprawling town west of Phoenix became ground zero for investors chasing Arizona's hottest growth story. Cash buyers from California, hedge funds, and individual speculators descended on Buckeye like prospectors rushing to a gold strike, convinced that endless suburban expansion would generate guaranteed returns. The gold rush is over. Investor purchases have plummeted 67% year over year as financing costs soar and profit margins evaporate. The speculative frenzy that once drove bidding wars has been replaced by a harsh reality. Most of these investment properties are now worth less than investors paid for them. New construction has ground to a halt on 40% of planned developments. You can drive through entire subdivisions where foundations sit abandoned and model homes stand empty, their optimistic sales banners now faded by desert sun. Builders who leveraged everything on Buckeye's growth story are walking away from projects that no longer make financial sense. The rental market tells an even grimmer story. Oversupply has pushed vacancy rates to 11.8% as thousands of investor-owned properties compete for a shrinking pool of tenants. Landlords are slashing rents and offering months of free rent just to avoid total vacancy. Property tax revenue is declining as assessed values fall, forcing the city to cut services just when struggling residents need them most. What happens when speculative fever breaks and reality sets in? Buckeye residents are discovering the answer firsthand. Speculative bubbles create artificial demand. But some Arizona cities struggle with the opposite problem: genuine demand that can no longer be met. Maricopa, affordability crisis meets geographic isolation. Maricopa once promised affordable homeownership within reach of Phoenix employment. This master-planned community south of the metro area attracted young families who couldn't afford Scottsdale or Gilbert but wanted new construction and good schools. The trade-off seemed reasonable. Drive a little farther to save $60,000 on a house. That trade-off has become unsustainable. Average commute times to Phoenix metro jobs now exceed 95 minutes each way due to population growth that outpaced road infrastructure. State Route 347, the primary connection to Phoenix, becomes a parking lot twice daily as thousands of Maricopa residents crawl toward jobs they can no longer afford to reach. Gas and vehicle costs are adding more than $800 monthly to living expenses for typical commuting families. At current fuel prices, a round-trip commute costs nearly $30 per day. Add vehicle maintenance, insurance increases due to high-mileage driving, and the time value of 3+ hours daily in traffic, and Maricopa's affordability advantage disappears entirely. The school district has been forced to cut 23% of programs as enrollment drops and state funding follows students out of town. Art classes, advanced placement courses, and extracurricular activities that once justified the long commutes are vanishing. Population has declined 3.1% since its 2022 peak as families relocate closer to work or leave Arizona entirely. The dream of affordable suburban living has collided with the reality of geographic isolation and soaring transportation costs. Geographic challenges compound affordability issues, while other cities face the unique problem of seasonal economic dependence. Lake Havasu City. When tourism can't save you. Lake Havasu City built its entire identity around recreation and retirement. Home to the famous London Bridge and crystal-clear Colorado River waters, this desert oasis became Arizona's playground for boaters, snowbirds, and vacation home buyers. The city's economy thrived on one simple formula: people with disposable income coming to spend money and enjoy the lake lifestyle. That formula is breaking down catastrophically. Tourist spending has plummeted 22% compared to 2019 levels as inflation squeezes recreational budgets and gas prices make road trips prohibitively expensive. The famous spring break crowds that once packed hotels and restaurants have thinned dramatically, leaving businesses struggling through what should be peak revenue seasons. Seasonal home sales have crashed 45% as retirees liquidate vacation properties to fund rising living costs elsewhere. These aren't distressed sales. They're strategic decisions by older Americans who can no longer justify maintaining second homes when their primary residences require increasing financial attention. Hospitality sector job losses have affected 18% of the workforce. Hotels, restaurants, and recreation companies that expanded during boom years are now cutting staff and reducing operating hours. The ripple effect touches every corner of the local economy. Water level concerns add another devastating dimension. Lake Havasu's elevation has dropped enough to threaten boat launches and marinas that form the backbone of the tourism industry. What good is a lake town when the lake becomes increasingly difficult to access? When your entire economy depends on people having extra money to spend, what happens when that money disappears? Tourism dependence creates vulnerability. But some Arizona cities face more fundamental demographic crises. Sierra Vista. Military community under pressure. Sierra Vista's fate has always been tied to Fort Huachuca. This southeastern Arizona community of 45,000 residents exists primarily to serve the military installation that's been its economic anchor since World War II. The relationship seemed stable and mutually beneficial until defense budget reallocations and military restructuring began reshaping the base's mission and personnel needs. Fort Huachuca personnel reductions have affected more than 800 military families since 2023, with additional cuts planned through 2026. These aren't temporary deployments, these are permanent relocations that remove families and their spending power from Sierra Vista's economy entirely. Each military family represents approximately $70,000 in annual local economic impact through housing, shopping, dining, and services. Military spouse unemployment has reached 31%, as the reduced base population eliminates many civilian contractor positions that historically employed family members. The geographic isolation that once provided security now limits employment alternatives. Phoenix is 2 hours away, Tucson 90 minutes too far for daily commuting to civilian jobs. Base housing improvements have reduced demand for civilian rentals as more military families choose on-post housing over community properties. Rental vacancy rates have climbed while property values stagnate, trapping homeowners who bought expecting continued growth. Local businesses that depended on military customers are closing at accelerating rates. Restaurants, retail shops, and service providers built their business models around steady military income that's now disappearing. The commissary and base exchange capture more spending as families tighten budgets. Military-dependent communities face unique challenges, while other cities struggle with the aftermath of rapid pandemic-era growth. Florence. Prison town economics failing. Florence built its modern economy on a foundation most communities would rather avoid: incarceration. This small town between Phoenix and Tucson became Arizona's unofficial prison capital, hosting multiple state and private correctional facilities that provided steady employment and tax revenue for decades. Corrections jobs offered middle-class wages without requiring college degrees, creating a stable economic base that supported local businesses, schools, and municipal services. That foundation is crumbling with shocking speed. 3 major correctional facilities have downsized or closed entirely since 2023, as private prison contracts expire and criminal justice reform reduces incarceration rates nationwide. The political winds that once favored tough-on-crime policies have shifted toward rehabilitation and reduced sentencing, leaving Florence's prison-dependent economy stranded. More than 1,400 direct jobs in corrections and related services have vanished, representing nearly 20% of Florence's total employment. These weren't minimum wage positions. Correctional officers, administrative staff, and support personnel earned salaries that sustained entire families and generated significant local spending. The housing market has become glutted as correctional workers relocate to find employment elsewhere. Home values have dropped 16% as inventory floods the market with properties owned by departing prison employees. Rental properties sit vacant as the population that once filled them no longer exists. Florence faces a municipal budget crisis as its largest tax contributors disappear. The facilities that once generated millions in property taxes and fees now contribute nothing, forcing cuts to police, fire, and infrastructure maintenance just when economic stress demands more public services. Single industry dependence creates catastrophic vulnerability, exemplifying the broader pattern affecting Arizona's most at-risk communities. The perfect storm: why these cities can't recover. These 10 cities share more than declining home values and shrinking populations. They represent a perfect storm of structural changes that make traditional economic recovery nearly impossible in 2025's transformed landscape. Understanding why these communities can't simply wait out the downturn reveals troubling truths about America's changing economic geography. Demographic shifts have permanently altered demand patterns across Arizona. The baby boomer retirement wave that fueled growth from 2000 to 2020 is ending as that generation ages into assisted living or passes away. Younger generations, burdened by student debt and climate concerns, are choosing urban centers over suburban sprawl. Remote work initially brought temporary population boosts, but return-to-office mandates have reversed those gains. Climate change is making desert living exponentially more expensive. Insurance premiums have increased an average of 42% statewide due to extreme weather risks. Water costs continue rising as Colorado River allocations shrink. Air conditioning expenses now consume 12% of median household income during summer months, compared to 7% in 2015. Federal and state policy changes have eliminated economic incentives that once supported growth. Tax credits for retirement communities have expired. Military base consolidations continue under budget pressure. Prison reform movements have ended the correctional boom that sustained rural economies. Most critically, these cities lost their competitive advantages. Geographic isolation that once meant affordability now means disconnection from opportunity. Single industry dependence that provided stability during growth periods becomes catastrophic vulnerability during contraction. The communities that thrived during Arizona's boom years are discovering that success was built on temporary conditions that no longer exist.